Hello everyone, I'm Melanie with Painting Crafty, and tonight we're going to be adding this little simple landscape to our drawing of the farm drawings. We're doing a little series of farm animals, so I thought why not try doing something a little bit different and add a little landscape into it. So I'm just going to do a very simple landscape. Anyone can do this, it's not that difficult, and I'm going to break down the steps so it makes it easier to follow along, and then I'm going to show you some watercolor steps after that. But it doesn't matter what you use to color yours in with. Once you have it drawn, you can use anything you want to be able to color it in. Now, those who might want to have a little help drawing, you could always go over to my Ko-fi page. That's where I have a sketchbook subscription, and I have all the tracers there for the drawings that I do for my YouTube. And it's very reasonably priced. You could just pop over there. And if you appreciate what I'm doing here, you could always buy me a cup of coffee. All right, let's go ahead and start this out. We're going to go ahead and make me small and the picture a lot bigger so we can easily follow along. So what I'm going to do first is start with the drawing shape. So let's just talk a little bit about the actual picture. Now this is about a 5 by 6 piece of paper, and you're going to want to, whatever size you use, draw a line across your paper, or even just by hand, about the thirds, the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds means that normally either your sky is going to be up here in this third, or you can bump it down and put your hills here and have your skies all the way up to the front. Usually you don't have a skyline right in the middle of your painting. That just looks a little bit better. So it's always something to practice and see and start getting in the habit of doing that. And then you'll be able to get your sky in a better place for landscapes. So I'm going to start with a rectangle. This is going to be facing towards me. So this is my rectangle spot here. Now let's go ahead and put the barn roof on. Now the roof of the barn is going to be a little tall because usually you've got tractors, hay mound, those types of things in there. So you're going to want to make it a little taller. I'm going to make my first line here at the edge of my rectangle, and I'm going to slope it in this direction. And then I'm going to come on this side, and I'm going to do the same slope on this one. So I'm going to come here and slope it that direction. So there is my roof, the beginning of it. Now I'm going to do the top part, the ridge of my roof, straight across. That will match whatever you drew here. Now we need to go ahead and make the sides. Now we can get a little fancy if we want to. We can go ahead and put a dot here off to the side, like that would be my horizon line. And what I would do here is I would draw a line all the way back to this side. And then I would come back to my line and I would draw a line there. Who remembers doing that in art class when you were younger? Maybe back in grade school or junior high art class. I loved perspective drawing, where you use your ruler, make all the lines. This is kind of similar to that, but we're doing it very simplified. Now we would come up here with our roof line, and we're going to make this triangle shape. So we come down and we stop at our line. Now to do this side of the barn, all we're going to do is look at our roof line here and come down, straight down. Now we've created the side of our barn. Now we have a little slanted roof here, like a little side shed on our barn with a little tiny, the roof line is getting smaller there. So we're going to, or the side of the barn, we're going to come here, we're going to slant it just a little ways. That would be the roof line. And then we're going to come down. There we have our building drawn. Now, once you erase these guides, right like that, we're going to have our little perspective right. So it's not as hard as you think it is. Kind of fun, actually, when you start playing with the lines. And it doesn't have to be exact either. And then all you would do is when you're going to be putting your windows in, I just did simple brush strokes to be able to do that, and putting my doors in. You can make them different sizes as well. So that is how you're going to create a little barn on your scene. Now we're going to talk a little bit about trees. What makes an interesting tree? Since this is a landscape, we're going to be talking a little bit about bushes and trees. Now to do this little tree, to create that perspective of that it's farther back, you need to consider your size. So if you look at here, I still have quite a bit of sky up above, and I'm not bringing my tree all the way up there because I want to be able to push that back farther. So I'm going to make sure my tree is small. When I'm doing this part, or the leaf part of my tree, a cone shape kind of going for a cone shape always looks good. If you have it a little bit bigger, smaller up here and then coming out to your side, we're just going to be kind of poking a little bit with our brush and creating a real irregular shape. That's going to look great. And to do the trunk, your trunk is going to be slightly larger as it comes down and touches the ground, just a little bit. And it always looks nice to do a little bit of a little T areas. I'll bring that in close. You can kind of see how the T's are, or the V's, I guess is really what I want to say. The little V's here, they're a little off-centered. They're not exactly like straight across from each other, but having some little branches in there and some open spots is going to create an interesting tree. And then the bushes, they're just going to be very very simple. They're just got some little bumps and lines in them, and that's how I'm going to be creating the bushes. Nothing too fancy when it comes to that. We're going to be walking. I'm going to show you how to do this fence line and then these round bales as well. So to do the fence line, I'm going to start with my post. When you do your post, the largest ones here are going to be the tallest. Those are going to be your tallest posts. And then you're going to get smaller as you come back. And as you get smaller, so maybe you want to start with the small ones first. That'll give you a better idea. Start with your small ones and then gradually get bigger as you come towards you. And by making those posts bigger as you're coming forward, that's going to give that illusion of that fence line is going back. Pretty cool, right? And then when I do the bob wire or the fence posts, whatever you might be doing, I usually do it individually, so it gives it an irregular look, and it's not just like running smooth like that. I like this look, especially if I'm doing like a wooden post. I want those to look like they're irregularly placed, and it just gives a lot more interest to your drawing. Take the time and draw them individually. I think you'll like that. Now to do these round bales, I have one that's facing this direction and one that's kind of facing towards me. Just going to have a rectangle. It's going to come across like that. And then we're just going to do the rounded end here, just a little bit. Oops, let's bring this up here. A little bit rounded here. So we've got our lines, our rectangle. And then to do the front, it's going to be mostly covered up. We're not going to see it. So I'm not going to bother too much. Let's place this next one in here. And if we take a look, we've got this rounded circle here out a little bit forward. So we're going to do that rounded circle like that. And then how we kind of did this one slanted back, we're going to do that kind of same idea. We're going to come back towards our other guy, come back here this direction. And then we're going to add the rounded part of the back part of our bale. And then now all of a sudden we have this cylinder look of it's going back. That's a simple way to draw it, and then you can add as many details in that you would like. This one has a little road that's in here as well. And we'll just talk about a little bit about that as we begin our painting process. Now tonight I am painting on a little bit different watercolor paper than I normally do. Normally I use the Canson brand, the 140-pound weight Canson brand, which is a student grade paper. But tonight I'm actually going to be using the Arches watercolor paper. It's still 140 pounds, but the difference in this one is that it's 100% cotton. So it's going to react differently to how much water you can put on, how much open time, how the colors flow when I put them on. So it's going to react a little differently. So I'm excited to show you how the watercolor paper works for the Arches watercolor. Now when we start our pictures for landscapes, I'm going to start with my sky. And when you do a sky, the sky is going to be darker at the top and then it's going to go gradually lighter as you get down to your horizon sign. And I don't know the science behind that, but that's just how skies are. Darker at the top, lighter as they come down. And if you do that, that's going to really give your sky a lot more depth and perspective. Now I'm going to go ahead and just take my watercolor brush and I'm going to wet this area. Now this paper takes water differently. I've noticed that. I don't paint a lot on this paper because it is a lot more expensive than my Canson brand watercolor. And I paint a lot every week. So I use my more economical paper, and then every once in a while, I call it breaking out the good stuff. I break out the good stuff and try it. And you know what? It's probably just a good idea to use. If you have different papers, get them out and try them. So then you learn about how does your paint work on that? How does the water? How much water do you need? All those different things. I wanted to pick this up. I do have my paper taped down today, which is also another new thing. You can kind of see how the sheen is on that paper. You can see that it's wet, but there's no puddles on there. And that paper is going to stay more wet longer than my Canson brand. Normally at this point, if I'm using Canson, I gotta hustle. I gotta get that sky done and no time for chatting. Okay, so let's go ahead. I can still see my paper's wet, and I'm gonna come right on in. So I want it darker up here, and then I wanna go lighter at the bottom. Now, if you need to add more water, rinse your brush out. I'm gonna go right over my trees because if I have open spots there with my tree, I wanna see blue sky. Now I can come in and add a little bit more of that darker color up at the top, maybe at the edges a little bit, and float some of that color in. Now I'm going to take a little bit of toilet paper, toilet tissue, whatever you might call it. I'm going to take a little bit of that and I'm going to roll it up lightly in my hand. And this is what I'm going to use to create my clouds. So I'm going to come in and tap a little bit of this up here randomly. And I'm going to create a little bit of a cloud effect. Okay. I'm going to stop right there and not go any farther. Let it dry a little bit and see what I get. Watercolor always dries lighter. So I want to give that a chance to dry and see what I end up with. Okay, so we have the skies done. Now let's talk a little bit about the grasses and the colors that you would use in your backgrounds. The colors back here on those back hills, that background colors, are going to be cooler colors, like so gray, green, a gray, green, just cooler colors on that side of the wheel, blue, greens. And then as you move forward, your colors are going to get warmer and they're also going to get more bold. So these ones back here are still going to be fairly washy looking, and then they're going to get more bold as we move forward. So let's go ahead and now since that's wet and this paper is going to stay wet a little bit longer, I'm going to start, let's lay some color down. Let's lay some color in here. So I'm going to come in and just pick up kind of a, just a green color is what I'm going to be using. Let's mix it over here. I'm going to be mixing about tea consistency. So I don't start out too bold, too quick. I can always go darker. I cannot go lighter. So let's go ahead and wrap some of this color in here. And I'm going to go around my hay bales because I know I don't want those to be having the green in it because I'm going to be doing golden color there. I'm going to go ahead and stripe some of this color in, moving my brush back and forth and going around my bales. Now, if you get some of it in your hay bales, you can always try to go in and lift your color up. What you're going to do is rinse your brush off with clean water, give it a squeeze in your paper towel, and then come in and gently rub those spots and see if you can't lift some of the color. Okay. Now, if your lines are too harsh in between your horizon line and your hill lines, come in again with your clean brush, but it's damp. You're going to give it a squeeze with your clean brush, and then just kind of gently tickle those edges and soften those edges so your colors get a real pretty blend to them. I'm going to come here and do the same thing. And just take a little bit of time to work those edges. All right, I'm liking the way that this kind of looks here with that, but it's got kind of a straight line. Do you see the straight line? I'm going to come in and tickle that a little bit, rub it and give it a gentle little push and make that more soft because that was getting to be kind of more of a hard line. It didn't really look like a cloud line. So I'm going to soften that little look there. That's the one thing about this paper, you do have to dry it a little bit more than what I normally do. So that's a step I'm not used to, and I'm not very patient when it comes to doing that. But it is necessary to take that time and let that paper dry because what's happening, you can see it here where my color flowed right up into the next area and it wasn't dry enough. So your colors are going to want to move wherever the paper is wet. So let's try this and see if I can't get this to kind of shape up and do a better bush look. Okay, it's coming together. We've got some shadows in there. It's changing the depth by adding those next layer of colors on there. Now this is still pretty wet, but I think I'm gonna tap in a little bit of this green as well. Those colors are still gonna blend together because they're pretty wet. So I wanna make sure I'm giving a little bit of time. And if you ever question whether or not you should dry and do the next layer, dry your paper. Give it a time to dry, especially when you're using the Arches 100% cotton paper. It reacts so differently. So take some time, dry your paper. So after you dry it, actually tap on it and see if it feels dry. If it feels dry, then you're probably safe to go right on ahead. I'm going to go ahead and work just a little bit more on these trees. So I'm going to choose that bluer green up here that I have mixed up, and I'm going to mix it with my green to get kind of more of a yellow and a warm green mixed together, kind of a medium color. Let's use a little bit of that and tap that in. Let's start a little bit on these hay bales. So I'm going to start with a goldenish color, like a straw color. A yellow ochre is what the color is I'm going to be using. Let's see if I can't find a spot to mix that on. Let's move it this way. I'm going to start with this golden color here. And again, I'm going to be starting light and then working my way dark. I'm going to tap it on my paper towel just to see, make sure I don't have too much water right away. And I'm going to lay in my first colors. Now I'm going to start with a reddish, orangish red color for my barn. This is a little dirty, but I think I'm going to still use that color spot because I want to tone that red down anyway. So to tone that red down, I would add just a tiny bit of green into it to give it more of a toned down color so it's not so saturated with my red. So I'm going to pick up just a tiny bit of green, add it to that color, and see where we end up. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to do a little bit more color on those trees. Now, if you feel like you might have gotten too dark, you can always come in with your paper towel and give it a tap and pick up and lift some of your work. It also kind of blends together your line work. You can also use your finger, hit with your finger to blend your lines and to soften them a little bit. That's a good trick as well. I gave that barn a dry, so I wanted to make sure it was nice and dry before I put my next layer on. Let's go ahead and add that next layer on. I'm going to make a shadow line here and a shadow line here. So I'm going to take that red that I was using and I'm going to deepen it a little bit. I'm just going to mix it in here. I think there was a little bit of green, grayish green that was puddled into that area. I'm going to really try to control the water because I don't want it to be too fast in my brush. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to add that darker shade here. This is also the color that I will be using to do my windows with. Have my little liner brush out, I'm thinking I'm going to mix up a little bit of darker brown to do my fence posts in. Again, I'm not going to want a lot of water to do this because I want a little bit more control of my paint. I'm definitely going to tap it out and let's work a little bit on these fence posts. Now we have to do this roof line, and what I'm going to do is just use some watered down browns and a little bit of gold. I'm going to hold my brush sideways and I'm going to drag it down there. This paper does have a tiny bit of texture to it, so it gives it kind of an interesting look. If you're looking at my picture, I think I need to anchor these, give a little shadow underneath my posts too, just to give them a little bit more dimension as they go back. All right, I think I like it. Now you can also add a few birds. That was with the goose picture that we did. We did a few little birds. I can add some birds in here. They're going to be kind of that little M shape. So I'm going to have it here. I'm just using my 01 micron pen. I'm going to have them flying different directions and having them fly, you know, like a grouping. So there's like 3 little ones. You could add more if you'd like. And there we have our little simple landscape. It was fun to do. It was fun to create. Hopefully you'll give it a try and see what you come up with. For those who might be watching your first time and haven't subscribed to my channel, I sure would love it if you did. Hit that bell. You will get notifications anytime I put up a new video. I usually put up 2 videos a week, so I do lots of drawing, lots of watercolor. I'm throwing a little mixed media in there as well. So that is it for my friends for this evening, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again.